Hello, my quilting friends. I have exciting news. I have just finished the double stripe diamond quilt. This is a quilt that I pieced several months ago. It's a free quilt pattern you can find at leahday.com/stripe. And now it's time to take it off the long arm frame, get it bound, and be able to enjoy it in my home. I'm going to use this as a tablecloth, but I think it'll really fit the best in the spring. So for temporarily, I think I'm going to hang it on my wall. So let's take it off the frame so that way we can enjoy it. The first step, since I have it right here, it just makes the most sense to go on ahead and cut away all this extra batting, because this is a big enough piece I can end up cutting some squares, maybe doing some embroidery or something out of them. So I'm going to grab a pair of scissors and I'm going to cut away all of this extra batting. And I usually try not to have this much left over, but sometimes it happens. I would rather have too much batting end up on the end of the quilt than not enough. Not enough is a catastrophe. It's not a lot of fun, but too much, I can always cut it off and do something else with it, right? There we go. That is taken care of. And now all I'm going to do is release the ratchets, the locks on both rails. And you can see that gets the quilt all nice and droopy. And then now I'm going to start taking out these pins. These were the pins that I installed whenever I was mounting the quilt to the frame. And I stuck all of the pins in going down in one direction. I'm left-handed, so I always insert the points pointing to the right. And this is important because then when you're taking the pins out, you want to start from the side where their heads are, and so that way I'm pulling them out. I'm not going against the grain and potentially sticking myself with the pointy tips of the pens. So that is very, very important. I hate getting stuck with these big chunky pens. I do use the thicker pens, longer and thicker pens, so that way they're nice and secure whenever you're mounting the quilt to the long arm. And please check out the other videos. We've got a video on how I mounted the quilt on the frame, how I loaded it, and a quilt on how I advanced it. So this quilt has really had a full progression through the long arm, as well as lots of videos on how to quilt different designs, and lots of free motion couching. I kind of went couching crazy about halfway through this quilt, which it's not the most balanced quilt in the world, I will be completely honest. I know as I pull it off the frame here, I'm going to be going, I should probably add more quilting, more couching to this, but I feel like it's done. I think it needs to get off the frame so something else can come back here. All right, so there we go, and I've got that ratchet opened, and here you can see there's the section with the couching, and then now we get into the section with just plain thread. Yeah, that's a little unbalanced, but I still think it's pretty. I still think it's a gorgeous quilt. And I learned so much stitching this, I've got to say. It's been an adventure just trying different designs, playing with rulers, did a lot of ruler foot quilting on this, did a lot of freehand, free motion designs, and gained a lot of control over where the machine was going. Still not perfect. That's why I really like the rulers, because it really helps you maintain control and be able to stitch straight lines where you want straight lines and nice symmetrical curvy lines where you want that. But it's also nice to be able to do big designs like stippling, pebbling, that kind of thing. And I got a lot of practice in with those designs doing the free motion couching. And I gotta say that free motion couching is very forgiving, because when there's a big, thick, chunky piece of yarn on top of the design, you really can't tell if it was properly quilted or not. The travel stitching just gets so chunky, it's like crayon drawing. It's awesome. So yeah, this is really simple, very, very quick. I'm just removing these pins all the way down the line, and that's it. The quilt's off the frame, and it's time to load something else up here. And I've got several quilts to put on the frame. I would say my biggest regret about this particular quilt is the style of quilting that I did. It was just a little time consuming for the amount of time that I had to work on it. So I'll pull it out and we'll kind of talk through the designs that I used. So the first decisions that I made right at the beginning, and this is where I started, I really decided to do echo ditching around every single diamond. Well, automatically that's going to be time consuming. It's going to be slow, because I have to basically either stitch around it and break thread, or stitch around it, travel stitch down, stitch the next one, all in a row. And then I was also doing echo ditching inside of every shape too. Very, very time consuming because of course I was breaking thread to get in there and do that stitching. So I realized about halfway through that I just really wasn't willing to commit that much time to it. And that's when the style started to change. And I have to say, it is wonderful to do this with certain quilts. Like, not every quilt can you go wild and crazy with. Some quilts, you really have to keep it consistent throughout. But it was a choice of either not finishing this and taking it off the frame, bundling it up, putting it in a bin, and just setting it aside, or finishing it on my own terms. And, I was just getting bored with it more than anything else. It was taking a lot of time and I was getting bored and I wanted to try new things. So I played around with stitching over some of the diamonds. I didn't particularly like that simply because it felt like I was breaking a rule that I'd set up at the beginning. If I set a rule at the beginning that I'm not going to stitch over the diamonds and I'm going to respect that piecing, then it really doesn't work for me to start stitching over them somewhere else. So I went back to echo ditching around the diamonds. Kind of was like, all right, I'm going to pay attention to them. I'll go on ahead and echo ditch around them, but I stopped feeling like I had to quilt inside every single diamond. That saved me a little bit of time. And then everything kind of just went crazy whenever I pulled out the yarn. I love this. It's really cool. It's completely unbalanced with the rest of the quilt. I made some really big mistakes and then I just ended up coloring it in, like that spot. I just ended up coloring it in, which is probably not the best choice for that particular spot. I think I might have planned to come back and re-advance the quilt and stitch back over that with yarn. But, honestly, I think this was great. It was a wonderful experiment. I learned a lot. If I put this quilt on my table as a tablecloth, it's certainly going to make a statement and it's going to get washed a lot. So I will be able to know if that free motion couching really is a good technique for bed quilts or if it is solely an artistic technique that's only intended for wall hangings. So all around, great experiment, great experience, I should also say, with the double stripe diamond quilt. And I'm going to take this outside and get a photograph of it so that way you can see the whole thing all stretched out. Here you go. I think that turned out great. So I hope that you've enjoyed all of these videos, seeing how this quilt was quilted from start to finish. If you'd like to see another quilt quilted from start to finish too, please let me know in the comments below. Or if there's particular techniques that you would like to see demonstrated on the Longarm, I'd love to know and be able to make videos that you want to see. So come and check out all of the videos I've done on the Grace Unique and the Continuum frame at leahday.com/frame. Until next time, let's go quilt!